part story in flying with the local top guns of the New Jersey Air National Guard.
You know, we've been talking a lot in advance of today about the fact that I had a very rare opportunity as a citizen to go flying in a fighter jet with the New Jersey Air National Guard. We're bringing you the first part of a two-part story today on that. And, you know, I think a lot of Americans got fascinated with air defense when the movie Top Gun came out. And, you know, it's not just taken care of by our regular forces in the Navy and the Air Force. There are reserve forces and National Guard forces, and there is a big unit down in Pomona, New Jersey. And what they do is they watch the New Jersey coast for Russians that are flying on their way through Canada down to Cuba.
They are in international airspace. They have a perfect right to be there. Why they're there, they're not out there just on a sightseeing tour. They're there to gather information. But we're not out there to harass them, so don't get that idea. We're out there to let them know that we know they're there.
To do this, 2 planes are always armed and pilots ready for instructions. Instructions that come into the Pomona Command Center from monitoring stations out of state. The unit can respond and be airborne on 5 minutes' notice. The airplanes are F-106 fighter jets, 30 years old and frankly on the verge of retirement. But they can still perform the mission they're assigned to do. And how many times have they actually seen Russians in the last 3 years?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of certainly more than a dozen times.
Today, I'll get an experience that few civilians will ever know. A chance to see our national defense team at work from the sky. But first, I need training. It's about 8:35, and I'm about to begin a process that will take about an hour and a half, and it's called Egress Training. And this is where they will teach me how, if it's necessary, how to eject from the airplane, and then survival techniques for once I get back to Earth. Very important, and that's where I'm headed now. The pilot will, of course, do all of the work, but when Sergeant Earl Zimmerman starts to assemble my flight gear, it immediately becomes very clear that this will not be a Disney World simulation, a video game, or a roller coaster ride. Although I'm told that a lot of the sensations will resemble the effects of those amusement park pastimes. Sergeant Zimmerman is trying to accommodate my small face with appropriate kind of mask because you can't have any oxygen leak. Very crucial to making this whole thing work out. Okay, where's the...
That's it. It's going to be about 45 pounds, so hang on.
Then there are the sobering realities of the emergency supplies built into the mesh vest worn under the parachute and into the ejection seat.
And you have your manual ripcord in case the automatic feature of the personnel chute fails.
Okay.
But don't pull that. Give the chute a chance to work, okay, the way it's supposed to.
So when you hear dogs barking, only then do you pull this. Here's a display which shows all the survival kit things, everything from number 15 suntan cream through first aid, which makes sense, to little packages of drinking water and, of course, signal lights. And finally, there's the fitting of a strange pair of leggings that look like Army-issue chaps. The G-suit functions like a tourniquet. After it's plugged into the aircraft, when the movements of the plane increase the forces of gravity on the body, the suit will inflate and keep the blood pressed above the waist and in the brain, preventing a blackout. After getting the gear fitted, it was off to the flight simulator for a rundown on which of this bewildering array of controls I need to activate in case of a command to abandon the aircraft. And finally, at 11 a.m., 2.5 hours after arriving, the pre-flight briefing with the pilots in charge of the day's mission, Colonel Craig Cosgrave and Lieutenant Colonel Ray Dothard. Along with me at the briefing, Channel 6 cameraman Steve Sachs, who will operate a minicam in another jet alongside of my ride.
We'll watch our G's because of our passengers. We don't want to put them through any extremes, but I'm going to lay some G's on you so you can understand what it's like when somebody says holds 5 G's.
Even though both of these men saw action as regular Air Force fighter pilots in Vietnam, this pre-flight briefing for a training drill is handled with the same seriousness and professionalism that they brought to their work 20 years ago when they knew they would face live fire every day.
Anybody who's flown this type of aircraft, they will miss it once they're no longer doing it.
As group commander, Colonel Cosgrave is full-time at his National Guard job, but Colonel Dothard is the more typical guardsman. He has a civilian job. In his case, he's a pilot for Eastern Airlines, but he wouldn't give up the Guard.
If you've been in the military and you do kind of get a little sense of duty and that kind of stuff, it's something that you kind of don't want to just give up and leave.
The mission of the 177th Flight Interceptor Group here in Pomona, New Jersey is fourfold: to detect, intercept, identify, and if necessary, to destroy enemy aircraft. The person who's flying me today is the group commander, Colonel Craig Cosgrave.
The flight is on an F-106 airplane. Wish me luck.
By the way, these training missions go up routinely, not just for our benefit. But I did ask Colonel Cosgrave why he was willing to let us show you how air defense looks from the inside of a fighter jet.
What we do is important, I think so, and I want the people, the taxpayers in New Jersey and Pennsylvania to know that we're here, why we're here, what we do.
The aircraft was almost bitter cold, and now I was grateful for the heavy layers of uniforms. I knew I was in for the ride of my life, and we'll show it to you next time on AM Philadelphia in Part 2 with the New Jersey Air National Guard. We're going to take a short break now, so don't go away.
almost 80 years, we've guarded the land below from the skies above. Join the proud tradition. Join the Air National Guard. Americans at their best.
Today we have part 2 of a story I started yesterday on the 177th Fighter Interceptor Group of the New Jersey Air National Guard.
We should let people know that you are so lucky. I love to fly. I would have loved to have gone up, but you were the lucky one.
Well, and that's what we're going to get to today. Where we left you yesterday was me climbing into the airplane. Today I fly. Now, I have a brother who's a naval aviator, but don't forget, when I was a little girl and when my pilot was, when my pilot was young, I was playing with Tiny Tears and Betsy Wetsy, not making model airplanes. So I thought about people like my brother and the pilot, and I wondered where he got his inspiration to fly, and he told me.
I was born and raised in Ohio, and I lived north of Wright-Patterson. And this was during World War II, and Wright-Patterson was kind of the Edwards Air Force Base then. And so every and any kind of airplane imaginable was flying over our house all the time. So that's, I suppose, where I first got exposed to it and got the bug. And then when I was small, my father, our next-door neighbor, was a pilot that ran an air service, and he took me up in a biplane open-air cockpit. That was my first flight.
And Colonel, there's a good bet that my first flight in your fighter jet is going to be just as memorable to me. Inside my helmet, I could hear the tinny bursts of data exchanged from the pilot to the tower.
334, go ahead.
I tried to forget about the dials, the indicators, which seemed to suggest problems, but were in fact working in routine fashion. As we lifted off the airstrip, I concentrated on what was out the window and, frankly, tried to forget how different this was from a commercial airline trip. Yet just across the flight line was a plane exactly like a commercial 707, also preparing for takeoff on an Air Guard drill. The military calls it a KC-135, and it functions as an airborne tanker, supplying fighter jets through a long hose which docks into the top of the other airplane. Because air-to-air refueling is now a routine procedure, the main restriction on the length of a mission is the endurance of the pilot himself. You want to know what the right stuff is? Meet Lieutenant Colonel Ray Dothard, in civilian life a pilot for Eastern Airlines.
The camaraderie in a fighter squadron on active duty, I don't know anything else you could compare it to. It tends to get the best out of each individual, but there are, some people will rise a little higher than others, but still nobody really looks down on anybody. I mean, you're still buddies, and even the worst pilot in the unit sometimes can prove that he's the best at something.
And if you ever wondered how realistic the scenes of dogfighting in Top Gun were in comparison with current battle strategy, Colonel Dothard's the one to ask.
We would be shooting much farther out of range than you saw in Top Gun and that kind of stuff. You wouldn't get the close-in effect that you had on the movie camera, but, it would be sort of similar.
A pilot with the right stuff knows his skills, his machinery, and his responsibilities, too. And the kind of cocky daring we all saw in Top Gun was part of the fiction of the movie. Flying through the soup of a thick cloud cover that day, my pilot, Colonel Cosgrave, spoke to me about how disorienting the whole process can be, and how much a good pilot relies on the accuracy of instruments to tell him literally what is up and down.
Does it feel like you're flying a straight level, or does it feel like you're in a left turn? It feels like I'm in a left turn. I can see that on that upper monitor. Yeah. Is that because of the cloud cover, no reference? Yeah, and their body sensors aren't reliable. Your inner ear, which goes with your balance, can fool you. You have to believe your instruments. It's killed no pilots and anything.
And it seemed as soon as I was really enjoying the ride, time to land. I did it. I can't believe I did it. When I look back at those F-106s to realize that I was up in them. And how did I like it? And I know that's what you're thinking. I really liked it, the ride of my lifetime. Because we went up above the clouds into the clear blue sky. We went past the speed of sound. And by the way, if you're wondering what that felt like, it felt like nothing had changed. What you really felt was the forces when you were accelerating, the G-forces pushing back on your body. I got a little queasy. I got over it. He told me to concentrate on taking pictures, which I did. A wonderful experience. But, you know, the important message here is this is not a ride at great adventure. This is our national defense. And that's why I'm so pleased that the men of the New Jersey Air National Guard gave us this rare opportunity to show you the work that they do for us here. Think about the fact that each one of those aircraft carries 4 missiles. They're ready to defend us. That's what this is all about. That's why we brought you this story today. I'm Lizabeth Starr. AM Philadelphia's going to take a short break. Don't go away.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed over me. So help me God.
The Air National Guard, Americans at their best.